Camille Hayes stood at the precipice of her most dangerous assignment yet, her eyes fixed on the sprawling cityscape below as dusk began to settle. The cool night air whispered promises of both peril and possibility, a constant reminder that each shadow on the wall could conceal a lurking threat or a hidden ally. For months, she had prepared for this moment with unwavering determination, knowing that the line between success and catastrophe was as thin as a razor's edge. Camille's life as an FBI agent had always been defined by discipline and resilience, but tonight, those qualities were about to be put to the ultimate test as she stepped into the labyrinth of the criminal underworld. From an early age, Camille had been drawn to the pursuit of justice. Raised in a tough neighborhood where lawlessness reigned, she had learned firsthand the meaning of sacrifice and the cost of negligence. The experiences of her youth had forged in her a quiet resolve that propelled her into the elite ranks of the FBI, where she quickly earned a reputation for precision, tenacity, and the ability to remain unflappable even when the stakes were impossibly high. Now, as she slid into the well-worn leather jacket that signified her dual identity, Camille allowed herself a rare moment of introspection. In the mirror of her temporary safe haven, a modest downtown apartment discreetly rented for the mission, she saw not the formidable agent whom her superiors revered, but a woman burdened by the weight of secrets and the haunting solitude of an undercover life. The stakes of this covert operation had never been higher. Tasked with dismantling a sprawling international criminal network, Camille had spent the past year meticulously crafting a persona that could slip unnoticed among the crooked elites. Adopting the guise of a sophisticated business consultant with impeccable charm and a mysterious past, she embarked on a relentless campaign of gaining trust among those who dealt in the shadows. Every conversation, every gesture was a piece of a larger puzzle, each moment spent building credibility was a brick in the foundation of a mission that, if successful, could cripple a major criminal enterprise. Yet, beneath the practiced calm and professional detachment lay a tumult of emotions, the gnawing anxiety of a life lived on borrowed time, the constant fear that one misstep could shatter her carefully constructed identity, and the bittersweet awareness that the mask she wore concealed a part of herself even she was beginning to forget. In the days leading up to the assignment's critical juncture, Camille had thrown herself into relentless preparation. With each training session, her body and mind were honed into tools of both observation and action. She spent countless hours poring over intelligence reports, studying the habits and weaknesses of key figures within the criminal syndicate. Every scrap of information was a lifeline, a path to navigating a treacherous maze where betrayal was as common as the fog that often blanketed the city streets. Although the process was exhausting, each discovery fueled her determination, reinforcing the conviction that her mission was not just about law enforcement, but about protecting the innocent from the unpredictable cruelty of unchecked power. The night of the operation arrived with an almost surreal stillness. The usually vibrant urban bustle had given way to an eerie calm, as if the city itself were holding its breath. Camille's heart pounded in synchrony with her measured steps as she made her way toward an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, a notorious rendezvous point where criminal deals were struck behind closed doors. Every detail of her plan had been rehearsed to perfection, yet the unpredictability of human nature meant that no script could ever capture the raw, volatile energy of the real world. As the rain began to fall in a light, persistent drizzle, each droplet on the cold pavement seemed to echo her inner turmoil and resolve. Inside the dimly lit corridors of the warehouse, the atmosphere was thick with tension and whispered conspiracy. Camille moved like a shadow among the murky figures, her presence masked by a cloak of deliberate anonymity. The criminals, engrossed in their own dark rituals of profit and power, paid little attention to the newcomer in their midst, a calculated oversight that was both a blessing and a curse. Each encounter was a delicate dance of words and glances, where a single misinterpreted signal could ignite a catastrophe. The adrenaline surged with every step, and with every passing moment, Camille felt as though she were balancing on the edge of a knife, acutely aware that discovery could lead not only to the unraveling of her meticulously built cover but also to a violent confrontation that might cost lives. Amid the murmurs of hushed deals and the clinking of covert transactions, Camille's thoughts drifted to those moments when the stakes had never seemed so impossibly high. She recalled the faces of the victims whose lives were upended by the organization she sought to dismantle, the innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire of ruthless ambitions and cold-blooded power. These images fueled her resolve, giving her the strength to push past the creeping shadows of doubt. It was not merely a battle of wits or a test of physical endurance, it was a moral crusade, a fight for redemption that resonated with every fiber of her being. Each step in the darkness was imbued with an unspoken vow, to bring light to a world where corruption had long taken root. Every moment in the warehouse was a study in controlled chaos. The soft hum of suspicious conversations and the clatter of clandestine exchanges created a backdrop against which Camille's mind raced with strategic calculations. She was acutely aware that her every move was under observation, not only by the criminal elements but also by the myriad of surveillance systems and intelligence networks that had woven themselves into the fabric of modern law enforcement. Yet, it was the human element that provided the most precarious challenge. Trust was a commodity in short supply, and even the slightest misinterpretation of her intentions could transform a potential ally into a lethal adversary. As the meeting progressed, Camille's pulse quickened with each step closer to uncovering the critical intelligence her superiors had long sought. Her cover was immaculate, a study in controlled ambiguity. But lurking at the edges of her consciousness was the foreboding notion that destiny often had a way of complicating even the best-laid plans. In the midst of the orchestrated disorder, a peculiar sensation began to take root, a subtle but insistent feeling that something was amiss. It was as if the shadows themselves were whispering secrets of treachery, hinting at a presence that did not quite belong. Camille's instincts, finely tuned through years of service, warned her that this night might hold more surprises than she was prepared for. Even as she moved deeper into the heart of the criminal meeting, that disquieting sensation clung to her like an unwelcome specter. With unwavering focus, Camille pressed on. The heavy curtain of night seemed to close in around her, yet she found a strange solace within its depths. In the solitude of the shadows, she was free to be both the guardian of justice and the architect of an elaborate deception. Every calculated glance, every whispered word was a step toward dismantling the fortress of criminality that had once seemed insurmountable. Amid the backdrop of uncertain loyalty and palpable danger, Camille's determination burned like a beacon in the darkness, an inner light that defied the encroaching gloom of a world rife with deceit. Now, standing in the silent prelude to an eventful escalation, Camille Hayes was a study in contrast. On one hand, she was the epitome of professional poise and surgical precision, a master of concealment and relentless pursuit of truth. On the other hand, beneath that steely exterior beat a heart laden with both hope and profound loneliness, a poignant reminder that the cost of protecting society often came at the expense of one's own inner peace. And as the drizzly night slowly morphed into the deep embrace of darkness, Camille felt the inexorable pull of fate, preparing to carry her into a realm where every shadow held a secret and every whisper could be the call to action. At this moment, with her mission unfolding before her like an intricate tapestry of danger and promise, Camille paused to gather her thoughts. The warehouse was more than just a meeting point, it was a stage upon which destiny would soon perform its unpredictable drama. Would the night unfold as meticulously planned, or would unforeseen forces upend everything she had worked so tirelessly to secure? This was the precipice of a journey into the unknown, a venture where the most powerful weapons were not always those held in hand, but the strength of resolve and the light of an indomitable spirit. Her eyes, reflective pools of determination and vulnerability, met the darkness with a quiet defiance, ready to face whatever came next. What would you do when faced with a moment of high-stakes uncertainty, knowing that every decision could change the course of events? As the deafening clamor from the previous chaos began to ebb, the shattered remnants of calm settled over the warehouse like a mournful veil. The night air was heavy with uncertainty and the bitter tang of betrayal. Camille Hayes, still cloaked in the silent determination from moments before, now found herself thrust into a maelstrom of confusion that blurred the lines between ally and adversary. In the aftermath of the explosion that had shattered the delicate equilibrium, the warehouse had transformed into a battleground of suspicion, where every shadow held secrets and every whispered command dripped with distrust. Within this disarray, an unexpected and daunting twist of fate unfurled before her eyes. Through the haze of smoke and strewn debris, a figure emerged, almost a mirror image of Camille herself. Dressed in a similar, albeit slightly worn, version of her undercover attire, the stranger moved with a hesitant grace that belied the frantic urgency of the moment. It was as if fate had plucked a doppelganger from the very fabric of her identity, setting the stage for a spectacle of mistaken beliefs and dangerous misinterpretations. At first, Camille's heart raced with disbelief. It was not merely that she had been caught in a crossfire between criminals and her own agency's forces. What pained her even more was witnessing a man whose face, shockingly, bore an uncanny resemblance to her own being mistaken for the very suspect they hunted. In the turmoil of orders and shouted directives, officers began to bellow names with growing certainty: Camille Hayes. Halt! Their voices, laden with both authority and doubt, escalated the tension to an intolerable crescendo. In those frenzied moments, every instinct in Camille's body screamed for action. Years of training surged forth, compelling her to both protect the truth of her identity and avoid inadvertently fueling the chaos. As she pressed herself behind a cold, concrete pillar, her eyes locked on the man whose presence sowed seeds of confusion. It was not simply that he resembled her; every subtle feature, every measured movement conveyed a story of desperation and misfortune. His eyes, shadowed and laden with regret, seemed to plead silently for understanding amid the uproar of a mistaken identity. Law enforcement and criminals alike were now caught in a perilous dance of misunderstanding. Some officers, gripped by the momentum of the unfolding crisis, began to suspect that the image before them was a cleverly orchestrated ruse, a ruse designed to divert attention from the true perpetrators hidden within the darkness of corruption. Others, driven by fear and a compulsion to restore order, advanced with their weapons drawn. Amid this chaotic ensemble, Camille's internal monologue resounded: "I must reclaim my identity, no matter the cost." The chaos crescendoed when a stray gunshot shattered the bitter silence for a heartbeat. In that fleeting, disorienting moment, the warehouse was painted red with sparks of danger and the echo of confusion. A piercing siren outside merged with the cacophony of frantic shouts and rapid footsteps, forging a new, unholy rhythm of conflict. The realization that her very existence had become the linchpin in a twisted narrative of error and deceit sank deep into her soul. Each passing second now felt like a decisive moment in which the destiny of not only her career but also her life was being contested. Determined to extricate both herself and the unsuspecting man from this nightmare, Camille surged into action. With precise, deliberate strides fueled by adrenaline, she maneuvered through the chaos toward the disoriented stranger. Her mind raced with myriad questions: who was he really? Was he a victim of misfortune, or had he been deliberately planted to undermine her efforts? The answers were as murky as the smoke that still curled in the air. But one truth was irrefutable: both of them were now ensnared in a dangerous web spun by twisted fate and malevolent design. In the midst of this orchestrated pandemonium, the man's eyes met hers. There was a flash, a moment of raw recognition mixed with terror. "I'm not who you think I am," he whispered hoarsely, his voice trembling as if each word was a struggle against the tide of chaos. Yet even as his words clashed against the surrounding tumult, they carried an undeniable plea for trust. In that heartbeat, Camille's resolve surged even stronger. She knew that to unravel the intricate conspiracy behind the wrongful identity crisis, she needed to forge a temporary alliance with the one man whose fate had become inexorably tied to her own. Grabbing his arm gently yet firmly, Camille guided him through a narrow, shadowed corridor behind a row of stacked crates. The passage was dimly lit by the intermittent flashes of an emergency beacon that cast wavering, spectral shadows on the walls. Her every step was calculated, each movement a measured defiance against the chaos that threatened to overwhelm the night. "You must come with me," she instructed, her tone a blend of urgency and compassionate command. "If we stay here, I fear we'll both be swallowed by this madness." With no time to question his sudden reliance on her authority, the man nodded almost imperceptibly, his eyes reflecting both fear and a glimmer of hope, a hope that perhaps someone, somewhere, would discern the truth amid the labyrinth of misinterpretation. As they fled deeper into the skeletal corridors of the building, the sound of gunfire and shouts gradually receded behind them, replaced by the stark hush of isolation. The tranquility of the dim passage contrasted bitterly with the pandemonium that had erupted just moments before. Every echoing footstep was accompanied by the pounding of Camille's heart, a relentless reminder of the stakes at hand. She couldn't shake the image of her reflection in the man's hesitant eyes, a reflection marred by the taint of mistaken identity. In that reflection, she recognized the terrifying possibility that her meticulously built life of justice might be dismantled by the very fact of her existence. How could a twist of fate so cruelly blur the lines between the hunter and the hunted? As they reached a dead-end corridor that led to a concealed exit, Camille paused to catch her breath and consider their next move. Her mind raced through a gauntlet of possibilities, each more perilous than the last. The bureaucratic labyrinth within the FBI, combined with the unscrupulous underbelly of the criminal world outside, had both played their parts in creating this fatal convergence. What was once a straightforward operation had now mutated into an intricate puzzle of identities, allegiances, and brutal power plays. In a moment of rare vulnerability, Camille allowed herself to acknowledge the oppressive weight of solitude. The solitary burden borne by undercover operatives was a crucible where trust was a luxury and every face could harbor a hidden knife. Yet, even as loneliness gnawed at her spirit, there was a fierce, unyielding courage that had carried her this far. She would not let an error, a cruel twist of fate, define her life, nor would she allow an innocent man to suffer the consequences of an identity not truly his own. Gritting her teeth, she reached out to him gently yet with a steely conviction. "Listen," she murmured, her tone soft but unflinching, "I know what it means to be trapped by your own identity. I'm not just fighting for justice, I'm fighting to be seen as who I truly am, not as a label mistaken for a crime." Her words, though quiet, reverberated with the depth of her convictions. In that instant, the man's hardened gaze softened, and he offered her a silent nod, a tacit acceptance of the perilous bond they now shared. Together, they navigated the winding streets of the city, leaving behind the suffocating confines of the warehouse. The urban night was a maze of neon lights and obscure alleyways, offering both shelter and danger in equal measure. Every corner they turned evoked a cascade of memories and fears, yet each step also rekindled a spark of defiance. With every cautious stride, Camille reaffirmed her commitment to unmasking the elaborate scheme that had ensnared her identity. The relentless hum of distant sirens was a grim reminder that the forces arrayed against her were vast and deeply entrenched. Deep in thought, Camille recalled the lessons etched into her very being by years of service, a lifetime spent in the pursuit of truth and justice. There was an imperceptible beauty in the struggle, a paradox where the fight against overwhelming odds not only revealed the harsh realities of the world but also illuminated the quiet, resilient luminescence of hope. It was this hope that burned within her even in the bleakest moments, a hope that her actions tonight might forge a path toward redemption and clarity. The narrow, rain-slicked streets offered little in the way of refuge, yet they were a necessary path through a city marred by corruption and deceit. As they pressed forward, the man's fragile voice broke the silence. I only took that jacket because I believed it might offer me a chance to slip through unnoticed." His confession was laden with sorrow, and in it, Camille recognized a reflection of her own burdens, a desire to belong, to hide in plain sight, even if it meant risking one's very soul. Her gaze softened as she realized that the man was not the villain he was made out to be, but rather a hapless individual caught in the same whirlwind of mistakes. "Then we both carry a burden not of our choosing," Camille replied quietly, her eyes reflecting the turmoil of a life lived on the razor's edge. "But tonight, we must choose, whether to surrender to the mayhem or to fight for the truth that lies buried beneath these ruins." The streets, under the watchful eyes of a city that never truly slept, became the backdrop for their precarious journey. With each passing block, Camille's mind methodically pieced together the subtle clues left in the aftermath of the warehouse incident. Who had engineered this cruel convergence of mistaken identities? Was it a rogue element within her own agency, or was it the criminal network exploiting every fissure in the system for their own diabolical purposes? A determination as cold and clear as a winter dawn crystallized in her heart. The earlier chaos was not merely a random accident but part of a larger, sinister design. Every misdirected order, every frantic shout had been a fragment of a meticulously crafted plan aimed at discrediting her, an agent dedicated to unveiling injustice. Now, as the rain began to fall softly on the deserted pavement, it washed away the superficial stains of the night, urging her to look deeper into the heart of the labyrinthine conspiracy. Under the stark glow of a flickering streetlight, Camille took a moment to reflect. Her thoughts were a tumultuous confluence of anger, sorrow, and steely resolve. She recognized that the journey ahead would be fraught with peril, and that the path to vindication was paved with sacrifices. But surrender was not in her nature, nor was it an option. The painful irony of being mistaken for the very criminal she had vowed to eradicate only steeled her determination to prove her innocence, by exposing every thread of deception that had been woven around her. As the night deepened, so did their mutual understanding of the stakes. Her temporary companion, whose life now mirrored the chaos of misattribution, looked to her not as an adversary but as a beacon in a storm of uncertainty. Together, they embraced the uncertainty of their paths, knowing that one wrong step could plunge them into irreversible darkness. Yet, they marched onward, hearts synchronized in a fragile dance of defiance, united by the promise that truth, no matter how obscured, would one day prevail. In moments when everything seems lost in chaos, what does trust mean to you, and how do you decide who to lean on? In the chill aftermath of their narrow escape, Camille Hayes and her uncanny counterpart slipped away into the night, their path lit only by the flickering neon of a city that had suddenly become a maze of secrets. Every step they took down rain-slicked streets carried them further into the tangled layers of deceit, a web woven with ambition, betrayal, and a sinister agenda that stretched its tendrils far beyond the immediate chaos of the warehouse. After hours of cautious navigation, the pair finally arrived at a nondescript safe house situated in a quiet, unassuming part of town. The building, a humble brick structure hidden behind overgrown hedges, offered little comfort. Yet, within its faded walls, there existed a fragile sense of refuge from prying eyes and unexpected dangers. Inside, the air was thick with anticipation, the soft hum of an old heater mingling with the persistent tap of rain against the narrow window panes. Here, in this temporary sanctuary, Camille allowed herself a moment to reflect on the turbulent path that had led her here. Sitting across from her mysterious companion at a scarred wooden table, the weight of uncertainty pressed down on them both. A silence, heavy yet charged with unspoken understanding, hung between them. The man, whose eyes betrayed equal parts fear and determination, murmured haltingly, "I only sought anonymity, thinking I was diving into a new beginning. But now, it feels as if I'm trapped in a cruel parody of who I am." His admission resonated deeply with Camille, who had long borne the solitude and emotional isolation that came from operating undercover. In that vulnerable moment, they began to see each other not merely as casualties of a dreadful mistake but as reluctant partners united by a shared destiny, to untangle a conspiracy that threatened to shatter the very foundations of trust. From the depths of her past experiences, Camille's thoughts wandered back to the countless nights of rigorous training, meticulous preparation, and sleepless vigilance that had defined her existence as an FBI agent. Every memory of her early days, the intensity of her academy classes, the discipline instilled by seasoned mentors, the quiet pride in outsmarting dangerous criminals, converged now in this critical juncture. The life she led was one dictated by sacrifice, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to justice, yet tonight she faced the ultimate test, not just of her professional acumen, but of her identity. How could she continue her mission when her very image had been weaponized against her? While grappling with these burning questions, Camille's encrypted phone buzzed with a coded message. The message was succinct but urgent, a directive to meet someone known only as Oracle, a shadowy informant reputed to operate on the fringes of both law enforcement and criminal circles. Oracle was known for possessing invaluable intelligence on the internal forces vying for control within the system, a system that now seemed compromised by traitors within its own ranks. Realizing that their only hope lay in obtaining fresh clues, Camille and her companion left the relative safety of the safe house. With cautious determination, they slipped back out into the sodden urban night. Their destination was an abandoned building on the city's outskirts, a relic of a bygone era repurposed into a clandestine meeting spot for those who dealt in secrets. The building's exterior was marred by peeling paint and defaced by graffiti that spoke of rebellious defiance. As they stepped inside, the harsh sound of their footsteps echoed through vacant corridors, magnifying the sense of foreboding that clung to each shadowy corner. Dim, sputtering fluorescent lights cast eerie silhouettes on cracked walls, setting a stage where every moment crackled with tension. In a secluded chamber, hidden behind a reinforced door, Oracle awaited them. Clad in dark attire with a face shrouded in mystery, the informant's presence was at once intimidating and oddly reassuring. Agent Hayes, Oracle intoned with a calm authority that belied the urgency of the situation, I have been expecting you. The voice carried a weight of unspoken secrets that immediately put the gravity of the situation into sharp focus. The person bearing your likeness was never an accident, and the chaos you witnessed is but the surface of something much larger. As Oracle began to unfurl the tapestry of the conspiracy, every word hung in the air with palpable significance. The informant revealed that a carefully orchestrated plan had been set in motion by an alliance of rogue operatives, elements within and outside the agency whose ambition was to sow discord by manipulating identities. Through sophisticated deceptions, a mole was embedded deep within the FBI, adept at fabricating evidence and planting false leads. This saboteur, working in tandem with criminal networks, had weaponized Camille's very image to misdirect the investigation, turning a hero into a convenient scapegoat. The complexity of the operation was staggering. Every layer of deception was designed to erase accountability, leaving a trail of confusion in its wake. Listening intently, Camille felt a fury simmer beneath her composed exterior, a seething mix of betrayal and determination that only deepened as Oracle outlined the scope of the corruption. The conspiracy, it appeared, extended well beyond the local gang wars. Its roots reached the highest echelons of power in Washington, where clandestine meetings and backroom deals were routine. The realization struck her hard, the very institution to which she had dedicated her life was being undermined from within. Every instinct, every fiber of her being, screamed that she must unearth this rot, even if it meant risking not only her career but her life. Oracle's words painted a somber picture. Deceit runs deep, Agent Hayes, and trust is a luxury you can scarcely afford. Your mission now is twofold, to clear your name and to dismantle the network that thrives on chaotic misdirection. With each revelation, the stakes grew higher and the moral imperative more compelling. Camille's mind raced with strategies, tracing the intricate web of connections that linked the rogue faction's operatives with influential figures in government and criminal circles alike. The betrayal was not an isolated incident, it was a systemic cancer that had infected the heart of the justice system. By the time Oracle concluded the briefing, Camille's resolve had taken on a new form. No longer was she merely an agent tasked with enforcing the law, she was now a crusader against a corruption that threatened to consume everything she held dear. Her determination was crystallized by a simple, yet profoundly personal realization: if she failed to dismantle this subterfuge, then every sacrifice she had made along the way would have been in vain. The road ahead was perilous, fraught with unpredictable dangers and hidden adversaries, but the clarity of her mission burned brighter than ever. Leaving Oracle's lair, Camille and her companion stepped back into the cold embrace of the night, their minds heavy with the implications of what they had learned. The city, which had already proven to be a labyrinth of shifting alliances and veiled motives, now appeared even more treacherous. Each darkened alley, every unlit street corner, could harbor spies, assassins, or worse, those who had orchestrated this intricate charade. Yet, as the rain tapered off into a muted drizzle, there emerged a singular, resolute truth: the pursuit of truth, no matter how convoluted, was a battle worth fighting. They found themselves walking side by side along deserted sidewalks under the spectral glow of streetlights, lost in thought yet aligned in their shared purpose. For Camille, the journey ahead was not merely a tactical maneuver but an exploration of her own inner landscape, a confrontation with the vulnerabilities and uncertainties that had long been buried beneath her professional armor. The realization that the very traits that made her an exceptional agent, her attention to detail, her unwavering perseverance, her keen intuition, were also the tools that would help her dismantle the labyrinth of lies filled her with a sense of stoic determination. As they made plans for their next move, a meticulous, multi-pronged investigation that would require careful coordination, trusted allies, and an unyielding resolve, Camille could not help but acknowledge the personal cost of such a pursuit. The corridors of power were lined with compromises, and the battle against corruption was often fought in the shadows of moral ambiguity. Yet, the conviction that justice must prevail, regardless of the sacrifices required, galvanized her spirit anew. In the reflective quiet of an early pre-dawn hour, as the city began to stir with the remnants of dreams and unspoken regrets, Camille found herself alone for a fleeting moment on a deserted rooftop overlooking an awakening metropolis. The distant hum of early traffic and the soft chirping of birds reminded her that life continued unabated, even in the midst of chaos. Gazing out across the urban expanse, she contemplated the dual nature of the world around her, a realm where light and darkness coexisted in a fragile balance, and where the truth, though obscured, still shone like a beacon in the gloom. The rooftop became a sanctum of introspection, a place where Camille reconciled the magnitude of the mission with the reality of her personal sacrifices. Every choice in this fraught journey was a step towards redemption or ruin, and the clarity of that truth instilled in her an unwavering resolve. The battle she now waged was not just for her own reputation, but for the integrity of an institution on the brink of collapse, and for the countless lives that depended on the steady hand of justice. With dawn slowly inching over the horizon, Camille gathered her strength for the trials ahead. Each passing moment was an opportunity to reclaim control of her narrative, to cast away the shadows of false identities and betrayals, and to confront the true masterminds lurking behind the elaborate ruse. The layers of deception were many, but so was her determination, unyielding, resilient, and destined to carve a path through the darkness. When faced with a convoluted web of lies and betrayal, do you trust your own instincts, or do you rely on the guidance of unexpected allies to navigate the darkness? The first pale hues of dawn had barely begun to stain the sky when Camille Hayes emerged from the labyrinth of deception, a solitary figure determined to reclaim her name and dismantle the treacherous network that had ensnared her. Every step she took across the rain-washed pavement carried the weight of hard-won experience and the promise of redemption. The city that once seemed impenetrable in its shade and shadow was now revealing fissures in its dark facade, cracks through which the truth could finally seep. In the muted light of early morning, Camille stood at the edge of a derelict industrial complex, a known safe house turned into a clandestine data hub for criminal communications. For months, this location had been a nexus in the shadowy underworld, but today, it would serve as the stage for a reckoning. With her companion's assistance, a man whose life had been as equally marred by mistaken identity as hers, she planned to extract the digital evidence that would expose the network of corruption plaguing both the FBI's inner circles and the criminal syndicates. The stakes, as always, were immeasurably high. Failure would mean not only the loss of her freedom but the possible perpetuation of a system riddled with deceit. Camille's mind churned with the images of the past 3 turbulent nights, the adrenaline of infiltrating the warehouse, the heart-pounding escape through twisted alleys, and the solemn briefing with the enigmatic oracle. Each memory was a piece of the puzzle, a puzzle that, when fully assembled, might reveal the identities of traitors within her own ranks. Determination burned in her eyes as she recalled the chilling revelation that someone high up in the bureau had deliberately engineered her downfall. Now, she held the only key to turning the tables, irrefutable digital evidence that could not be denied. Inside the industrial complex, corridors echoed with a cold, mechanical hum. The building's stale air was heavy with the residue of clandestine meetings past. Camille led the way through a narrow staircase, her every footstep resonating with the sound of purpose. Shadows danced along the peeling walls, their movements inextricably tied to the flickering light of malfunctioning neon signs. She moved silently, mindful of surveillance and the omnipresent threat of betrayal. Every crack in the floor and every echo in the hallways spurred her forward, each one a reminder that time was the enemy of truth. Reaching a secured room, Camille knelt before a rugged, outdated terminal, a relic that, ironically, was the repository of the digital secrets she needed to unravel the conspiracy. With nimble precision born of countless hours honing her craft, she set to work bypassing firewalls and covert encryption protocols. Her fingers danced over the keyboard, entering lines of code and bypass commands that seemed like incantations against the onslaught of malicious interference. As the terminal hummed and lights blinked in response, the facade of darkness that had obscured hidden truths began to crumble. During these long, tense minutes, memories of her earlier encounters flooded back. The stark confrontation with Oracle had revealed that corruption was not a solitary enemy but a vast, interlocking system, a giant spider web spun from greed and ambition. The realization was shattering. The mole in the FBI, whose identity remained obscured by layers of fabricated lies, had been orchestrating a systematic campaign of obfuscation and misdirection. Camille had always known that her job was fraught with danger, but nothing could prepare her for the betrayal from within. This digital archive, once secured in the vaults of an enemy's hidden base, held evidence that would turn the tide in more ways than one. A sudden alert on the terminal startled her. Someone else was attempting to access the database remotely. The system's defenses flared momentarily, and Camille realized with a shock that she was not alone in the fight. Within seconds, the door creaked open, and a figure appeared in the dim light, a fellow agent, whose eyes were wide with the realization that the operation was spiraling into public exposure. It wasn't an enemy, but a trusted ally from a specialized cyber task force, sent to support her mission when the risks grew too perilous for a single operative. The agent's presence, though unspoken, affirmed that the war against corruption was a collective struggle. In a hushed voice, he relayed that the breach he had observed was not hostile, it was a diversion implanted by the very network they sought to dismantle, intended to mislead and delay them. Working quickly, the two agents secured the connection and began downloading the trove of incriminating files. Each file was a microcosm of the larger conspiracy: intercepted communications, financial records, and covert recordings that linked high-ranking officials within the Bureau with notorious criminal enterprises. The enormity of the evidence was staggering, and as the files transferred to a secure drive, Camille felt a bittersweet pang of both triumph and sorrow. Here were the documents that could free her from the shackles of deceit, but they were also a damning testament to a betrayal that ran far deeper than she had ever imagined. Yet, the digital victory was only the prelude to the ultimate confrontation. As the download neared completion, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor. An unmistakable tension filled the air, a palpable fusion of urgency and doom that made even the relentless hum of technology seem ominous. Camille and her fellow agent exchanged a brief, decisive look. Without uttering a word, they secured the drive and prepared for what might be the final stand against the conspirators. Each heartbeat synchronized with the thundering pulse of destiny, and every muscle in Camille's body tensed as if in anticipation of an inevitable clash. The door burst open. Commanding voices rang out, but they were quickly swallowed by a symphony of chaos, gunfire, shouts, and the skittering of boots. The diversion had been a ruse. The enemy was closing in with a precision that only orchestrated treachery could muster. In the ensuing melee, Camille fought with an intensity that belied her calm exterior. Every block, every parry, every calculated move was a testament to years of relentless training and the unwavering belief that justice could outshine deceit. The firefight escalated into a brutal dance of life and death where time seemed both suspended and infinitely fleeting. Amid the fray, Camille's mind remained as clear as ever. She drew upon the reservoir of inner strength that had seen her through countless dangerous encounters. The image of her family, the loved ones who were shielded by her sacrifices, flashed before her eyes, imbuing her with a resolve that was palpable. With each adversary that fell, she inched closer to the truth. The chaos around her was a maelstrom of shattered glass and splintered concrete, but within that mayhem, she discovered the opportunity to expose the true villains. The firefight crescendoed at a point where multiple factions, each with conflicting loyalties, converged upon the site. In this maelstrom, high-ranking conspirators emerged, their faces masked by arrogance and the cold assurance of power. They had anticipated this moment, the final showdown where the digital evidence would be snatched from within secure walls, and had orchestrated a counterstrike to silence the agents forever. The leader of the rogue faction, a man with an unsettling calm and eyes that burned with calculated fury, stepped forward. His voice, rich with disdain, echoed through the chaos. "You think you can expose us? You have no idea the forces at play." His words dripped with both menace and the confidence of those who had orchestrated countless crimes from the shadows. In that charged moment, Camille's heart pounded in defiance. With nothing left to lose, she stepped out from her cover, locking eyes with the rogue leader. "I know exactly what you've done," she declared, her voice resonating with the unyielding spirit of someone who has seen too much suffering to be silenced by threats. In that brief exchange, the battlefield seemed to pause, each participant holding their breath as the scales of fate balanced on the edge of a knife. The rogue leader's eyes narrowed, and for a heartbeat, a silent understanding passed between them. The truth, however obscured by lies, was coming to light. In the ensuing moments, allies from within the police and reinforcements from trusted factions within the FBI stormed the complex. The rogue operatives found themselves outnumbered and outmaneuvered, as the combined force of determined agents and the compelling weight of evidence turned the tide. In a display of ironclad resolve, Camille and her team pressed forward, each step an act of reclamation against the dark forces that had tried to bury the truth. The digital files, clutched like a sacred covenant, were quickly transmitted to a secure national database, ensuring that the evidence of corruption could never be erased. As the battle drew to an end, a fragile calm descended over the shattered complex. The once sinister corridors were now echoing with the sounds of resolution, guards taking custody of the conspirators, and fellow agents surveying the extent of the betrayal with somber determination. Camille, her uniform stained with the remnants of the conflict, took a moment to survey the scene. In that quiet interlude, she felt the profound burden of a duty fulfilled, tempered by the bitter taste of knowing that the fight for truth was an endless endeavor. Standing amidst the debris and the echoes of a hard-fought battle, Camille knew that the evidence she had secured would not only vindicate her but would also serve as a catalyst for systemic reform. The revelation of corruption within the FBI was an indictment of a larger malaise that had allowed treachery and greed to flourish unchecked. With the light of dawn strengthening outside, she felt an unexpected surge of hope, a hope that the truth, once suppressed in the darkest corners, would now spark a new era of accountability and transparency. In the final moments of the confrontation, as the conspirators were led away and allies offered solemn nods of gratitude, Camille's eyes met those of her unexpected companion. In that shared glance, there was a silent promise, a pledge to never let the forces of corruption rule unchallenged. Together, they had weathered the storm of mistaken identities, deceitful diversions, and orchestrated chaos, emerging not unscathed, but transformed by the burden and honor of their mission. The journey ahead remained daunting. The exposure of such deep-seated corruption was merely the beginning of a long, arduous process of rebuilding trust in a system that had betrayed its own. Yet, as the first full rays of sunlight broke over the horizon, Camille felt a profound sense of closure mingled with the resolve to continue her fight for justice. The specter of her past mistakes and the relentless ambitions of those who thrived on deception would continue to haunt the corridors of power, but with truth as her shield, she was ready to face whatever came next. Now that the truth has been unveiled amidst the chaos of betrayal and unexpected alliances, how do you think we can begin to rebuild trust in institutions that have been compromised? As our journey with Agent Camille Hayes draws to a close, we are left with reflections that resonate beyond the thrilling escapades, the twists and turns of mistaken identities, and the heart-stopping battles against corruption. This story, steeped in the grit of betrayal yet shining with the unyielding glow of courage, reminds us that the fight for justice is not just about the battles we wage on the outside, it is also a journey within, where love, hope, and resilience pave the path toward a brighter tomorrow. In the quiet aftermath of chaos, where the echo of footsteps and the distant hum of a recovering city mingle in the early light of dawn, we find comfort in the very core of what it means to be human. It is here that Camille's unwavering determination teaches us an invaluable lesson: truth and goodness flourish even in the darkest corners of our world when we dare to stand for what is right. Beyond the explosive confrontations and digital revelations, this narrative is a heartfelt tribute to the inner strength that resides in each of us, a quiet yet powerful resolve to mend a flawed system by embracing compassion, integrity, and unity. Throughout her tumultuous journey, Camille discovered that the most formidable battles are not fought solely with weapons or codes but with the courage to reveal one's true self despite the risk of being misunderstood. Her struggle was a mirror to our own struggles, moments when life's uncertainties push us to the edge, forcing us to confront our vulnerabilities head-on. Yet it is precisely in these moments of truth, when fear gives way to determination, that we realize the transformative power of love and solidarity. For it is love, love for our fellow human beings, love for justice, and love for ourselves, that ignites the spark needed to light up the path through adversity. As you reflect on her story, think about the light within you. Remember that every challenge carries a lesson and every setback holds the promise of growth. In a world that sometimes seems overwhelmed by injustice and mistrust, let us be inspired by the courage of those who strive to make a difference, no matter how insurmountable the odds. Each act of integrity, every moment of empathy, is a brick in the foundation of a future where transparency, trust, and love prevail over deception and despair. We invite you to carry this message in your heart: the journey toward truth and justice is a shared one. Whether you face personal trials or witness global challenges, know that every step taken with unwavering resolve can help illuminate the darkness. In our shared human story, it is the bonds we form and the care we extend to one another that truly define our legacy. Let us celebrate every act of bravery and compassion, nurturing our collective strength to build a more just and compassionate world. Thank you for joining us in this immersive adventure, a story of resilience, transformation, and undying hope. Your unwavering support and the passion you bring to the search for truth are what inspire us to continue sharing stories that matter, stories that spark change, and stories that remind us of the limitless power of love. If this tale moved you or encouraged you to see the spark of hope in challenging times, please remember to subscribe to our channel and join our community as we continue to explore inspiring stories from the heart of our human experience.